Okay, so it's Friday. It's that time of the week when I get to talk to the Umbraco community. So today I'm joined by my good friend and longtime MVP and general nice guy, Mr. Lee Kelleher. How you doing, Lee?
Hello. I'm very good, thank you.
Good.
How you, Warren? You good?
Yeah. Yes, good. Busy, which is always a good sign. Yeah, how have things been?
Good. Like you say, busy. It's always busy for me at the moment. Yeah. So I guess the main things I've been busy around is working on the Carlsberg projects, which I don't know if those who came to Code Garden would have seen. I did a talk on how we built several Umbraco sites on the Carlsberg.
So you kind of made it. So just to kind of interject there, you kind of made it generic, didn't you, or something? Kind of.
Yes. So
I actually missed the talk.
No, that's all right. There was a talk. I think the talk that was on at the same time was about mobile, and if I didn't do my talk, I would have watched that one. So no worries. Yeah, it was the main reason with Carlsberg wanting to use Umbraco, and also the key part was use Umbraco as a service.
Yep.
Was that they found that with all of the existing websites and brands and whatnot, they were on different platforms. So some of them were Sitecore, some of them were like WordPress, some were whatever. There was no sort of consistency with the platforms, and also they wanted like a stable base build that you could just roll out of.
So if they got a new brand, or a brand goes out to, I presume, a different market, so Carlsberg in, I don't know, China or something, they can just spin up a new base site and then skin it, I presume, or something. Yeah,
that's it exactly. So like one of the examples was that we launched a site for Tuborg. I know all the Danish Umbraco people know Tuborg, but it's not as popular in the UK. But so Tuborg we launched like a global one for those, but they have the different markets. So like there's like Russia and Italy and things like that who are already starting to roll out on that platform. So it's and it's sort of like the cost has reduced dramatically for them, so they're really happy.
That's cool. I know that we kind of jumped introductions, so let's try, for some people who may not know you, obviously you're actually quite well known in the community, obviously long time MVP, but let's do some introductions then. So how did you get involved with Umbraco? Let's try and figure out the backstory a little bit then.
Sure. Okay, so I've been doing web dev and sort of what is now .NET, but classic ASP. That's what I started out doing. So back in, I don't know when, 1996. I don't know, whenever the first classic ASP thing came out, because I had a Windows machine and I knew you could install whatever it was called then, personal web server, and that had ASP on it. So that's what I started doing. So VB script. And also JScript at the time, which is kind of funny because it comes full circle with like kind of Node and JavaScript these days. So I got into doing classic ASP, went to university, did all that sort of classic sort of computer sort of training. I was doing Pascal, I was doing C, I was no good at. I was doing COBOL, which is like no one touches these days, so it's not in the web industry. And then .NET came out, got involved with that. And just kind of, I worked at an agency in Liverpool called Amaze. There's several other people from the Umbraco community who used to work there as well. Ishmael was one, Chris Gaskell. There's a whole bunch of guys who used to work there, and females as well. There's quite a good female devs. Some of them are better than the male devs. So I kind of went from there, and since leaving Amaze, I started my own business. But that's when I wanted to find like a good open source CMS. I did find WordPress and I did PHP for a couple of years. But then I found Umbraco, and that was it. So
why the choice between the PHP stack and the .NET stack? What was the decision?
I guess my history was with .NET, so I felt more comfortable with that. I also the winning thing was XSLT. But I guess I looked at all the PHP ones because they were so popular. There was Drupal, Joomla, WordPress, and they just were so popular. There's so many plugin packages. What whatever else themes for them. That was the way to go. So that's what I did, but I just got frustrated with, especially with WordPress.
So was the frustrations more about the control of the output or the markup, or?
Yeah, WordPress you can do pretty much what you want with markup. I think the key thing with WordPress was schema. So if you want a blog,
makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You've got a blog title. You've got the body text. You add the category. That's fine. But the websites we were building, we wanted to do more complex things. Like we want to have media pickers dropped in here and there, and be able to customize kind of the editor experience. Where in WordPress it's quite fixed. I tried Drupal. I got lost.
Fair enough. Okay, so that's how you come into the Umbraco community then. So that was what, maybe 5-6 years ago now.
It was I was thinking about this before 2007. So version 3, I think.
Yep. Okay.
I think it just released version 3. And that's the one I jumped on, and I was really enjoying it.
Yeah, fantastic. So obviously you've been a long-time MVP as well. You do a lot of contributions, either be it packages or helping out on the forums. So obviously we're going to talk about a new package today that you've recently just released.
Yes.
So it's Ditto, isn't it? Is that right?
Yeah, it's Ditto. We're trying to think of names that don't start.
Least I was going to say, least it wasn't. The U Ditto or U model.
I think there is one called UMapper, and I think that was in U components. I didn't want to get away from that. Matt Brailsford actually did come up with the name Ditto because I was lost. I was like, I don't know what to name these things. So that came about through the Carlsberg project, but its genesis came from a post that Darren Ferguson did for the 24 days in Umbraco, which is the Advent calendar for those who don't know it. So in the 24 days in the run up to Christmas, there's like a new post every day by someone in the community that tells something cool or exciting. So Darren did one, and it was how he uses Reflection to map content or media nodes to their like a POCO model. And I looked at that and I thought, well, that's quite good. And wanted to take that sort of step further, and used Carlsberg as a test bed for that. Okay,
so it's grown from obviously Darren's original post, and then it's come involved from doing a real life project then.
Yes. So we use this like in the base in the base sort of build that we do for Carlsberg, which is now being rolled out to several other brands. So it's being used on many websites, even though it all comes from the same code base. It does work, and it's proven to be quite useful for what we needed it. Okay. I mean, I released that this week, and that's only because we've been building this since like January. But we released it this week because that's the first time I've had any free time to kind of package it together and get it out.
So what? Do the final polish and document?
Try and get some documentation together, because that is the thing that all developers sorely lacks. It's like,
exactly. So I'm going to ask the inevitable question: why Ditto over X, Y, Z other model mapper, or code first or code last? So obviously recently had Stefan Gay on, and he showed his Visual Studio kind of code last approach that generated POCOs. So how or why is Ditto different, and why would I potentially want to use Ditto over, say, another product?
Sure. So, I mean, my sort of experience with these mappers or the code first is that we used to use USite Builder on quite a lot of sites, and the main reason I use USite Builder, which is kind of a side note, is so I can version control my document types, so that I could have my document types as classes. They'll be in my source control, and then they'd be versioned. And then it would create the doc types from that, and then you could also then map your content nodes to those things. But the problem with that was that I had to buy into the USite Builder kind of methodology. I had to use it, and then some of these other mapping tools that I found as well just seemed to do quite a lot of ceremony. You had to do things a certain way to get those to work. You had to always do something in your app startup and put something there to do something for dependency injection, and then always inherit from certain classes, and then you always have your controllers do a certain thing. There was a lot of what I felt was ceremony. All I wanted to do was just say, I've got some content, like a content node, and I want to map it to this POCO, or maybe I don't want to map it to this POCO, I want to map it to this POCO. It's not tied. My content is not tied to a certain model. It can just be mapped whenever it needs to, and hopefully I can show you an example of why that is.
Yeah, so let's maybe go through that.
Sure. So the kind of the reason that this came into play, and I'll share my screen now.
Yeah.
For the Carlsberg projects,
Mm-hmm.
we were working with an agency in Denmark called Spring Summer, and the way that the developers worked is that they used a technology called Assemble. I don't know if you've heard of Assemble, but it's
I can't say I have.
It's a static site builder, so it's based on Node.
So is it similar to Jekyll or something?
Exactly the same. So whereas Jekyll's kind of geared to be like a static log engine, this is just a static site. So in terms of like MVC, let's just say Assemble is the controller, but what you would have as your model would be any kind of JSON, and then what you'd have as your view is they use handlebars, JavaScript templates, and you would have grunt tasks that would then, you would say, here is my data, my JSON, here are my handlebar layouts and my views, and then that just basically generates it all together. So we were the front end guys did this, but what this showed me when they were building it was that we would have, and just to show you the files that they gave us, they gave us like say like for the home page we would have some like YAML front loading, whatever they call it, some metadata about the page, but then like partials that are used with different bits of JSON models that go through with it. But this is like wrapped in like a layout page. So we were given these handlebar templates, which is just HTML markup with the handlebar syntax. So we could see that they separated out things to to use partials. There was also thrown in properties, and this kind of data, this JSON data, which I'll come to. They kind of done a lot of the logic. So if there was, say, one of the beer websites had an age gate, which was a legal requirement, then it would show, it'd check if the age gate was needed or not. They started putting logic into these things, and I started to think, well, I'm just going to redo this in Razor.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
So I should just kind of, instead of me trying to sort of overcomplicate things, I should just take what they've got. This is the original thought. Take what they've got, maybe even write a handlebars view engine. I don't know, but that got too complicated, too ambitious. But take what they've got and kind of razorify what they've done. So
did you just take their JSON object then?
Yes, exactly. So they had several bits of JSON on the sidebar. They have loads of like JSON files down here, but like the main one was one called site, and that had like properties like such as this, site title, whatever else. So what I did, I took their JSON and created like C# models that represented that JSON, which I don't know if people know this with. A plugin for Visual Studio called Web Essentials, which I think a lot of people would install if you're doing web dev. But what you can do with Web Essentials is you can actually, there's a method in here to say paste special, and you can paste JSON as classes. So if you copy JSON, so if I copied this chunk of JSON, and then went over to Visual Studio inside a class, say paste JSON as classes, I'd get C# classes.
Okay, so there's some extension.
Which is I think it is just with Web Essentials Visual Studio plugin. So what I did then, just to mock up some of these things, was that I create the classes. I'd read in the JSON from these files, and then start to razorify the handlebar scripts. So like if we looked at, this is like the Razor layout I've got. But if we looked at what they had.
So you had there was something about age gate.
So they've got like
a boolean there as well.
Yeah. So I've got basically it's mapped. I mean, I've kind of hidden what they've got in a nicer extension method. But if they check is age gate off if age-gate isn't off, and so I've changed it to be more readable if age-gate's off. But that method itself, is just if the age-gate is equal to off, and that's all I did. So my layouts for the pages were very, very similar in terms of logic to what they provided, and it also gave me a good kind of map. If they made any changes, I could kind of see where these things were.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted, to be able to have like a strongly typed model to sort of say, like, I can just if I wanted something from, like, if they say something like this, they put like a body class where they want site.gate, I could have in here where I could say my model.site, and then I could check what type of age gate type it was, or something like that. So I was creating models that were mapping to the JSON structures.
That's very nice.
So
you used that extension to create the classes.
Yes.
So how do we get the view to pick up your models?
Yes. So I've created those C# classes. I've just taken those out. Now from there, I'm using just custom controllers for the different pages. But this is where we use Ditto. Now I can start digging into this, but this might get too complicated. So if anyone kind of
I was going to say I'll let you know.
And find out. We had a lot of custom controllers, and this is just root hijacking. But this is where Ditto came in. So, like, let's just say we have a page within Umbraco, which is called language landing page. That you don't need to worry about that, but it's a custom controller.
Okay, so you're just hijacking based on the document type alias.
Yeah. So your model comes in, which is your iPublish content plus what the culture is, and then we use Ditto to. We've got an extension method for Ditto, which can map a piece of content to a model. Now, in this case, we use it's quite a long class name, but we map it just to a C# class, a POCO object, and then that will bring that back, and we can manipulate that a bit further. I mean, this bit gets a bit complicated because there's a bigger kind of solution to it for Carlsberg, but I can show an example of how that's done on a more simpler level. Yeah,
that'd be good.
Yeah. So there is a video that I did. I did a screener that did like an introduction to Ditto. I don't know if it was too. I don't know, it went too fast or not, because you're given a 5-minute time limit on screener, so you're trying to cover as much ground as you can. But just to take a kind of step back in terms of how to map these models to map content to models. This is just what I've got now is just a Umbraco 714 install with the starter kit, the TXT starter kit, and what we've got on this page is just title, content, and an image. And what I have from there is that I created a class that that represented that same thing. So I'd have like a title, body text, and an image, and I've given these names like the same as the property aliases. So what I could do then is using Ditto. Ditto's already installed. Is that I can just create.
So is Ditto literally just a DLL?
Yeah. It's just one DLL, and to be honest, it's everything goes through this one extension method. So it's not trying to sort of be something sort of bigger than that. It's we've got this piece of content, and iPublish content, and they say I want to map it as this, or if I wanted to do multiple ones, if I had a second like POCO object, I could map the same piece of content to a different class, and then have all those things.
So how does it try and do the mapping? Is it doing based on convention, or
it's based on reflection first and foremost. So it checks the names of the items, of the properties that you have, and then tries to get the property
based on the same alias.
Yeah. So I mean, so like if in here, if you're in here, it would try and ultimately it would try to do. This is what Stefan's model builder ultimately does. But what it would try to do is if it had a piece of content, right? So let's just say, I know this isn't here, but it would try to ultimately call get property value, and then whatever this type is, and then whatever that is. But it's not case sensitive when you call that an Umbraco, when you call the Umbraco API. So what the reflection part is doing is going through all of these properties, getting the names, obviously assign that to there, and then getting the type and assign it to there, and then that will just run through Umbraco as it needs to. It's just doing that in
just on convention.
Yeah. I mean, there is.
Could I do a computed property as such? So if I create a new property on this class, say on our document type we had a text box for name and a text box for last name. Could I create a computed property as such that is the name, first name and last name?
Yeah. I guess you can. So if you can just make that just a get, so it'd be read only, and that could return, just whatever this dot title plus whatever. The last, if you had the last name or something, that would work. That would be fine, because what Ditto would see is that it's not, you've not got a setter on it, so it won't try to set it using it won't try to map that property name with an alias for the doc type.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there is a couple of attributes that we've got as well in Ditto. Let's just see. We've got like one called Ditto ignore. So
I was going to say, is there a way to ignore properties?
Yeah, you could just say I don't want to have that one, or if let's just say if your body text had like a different doc type alias, or let's just say you didn't want to use that, you wanted to call it content, you could have one. We've got one called Umbraco property.
Okay, so you're defining this is the property alias.
Yeah. And then also there's extra ones in there. What's like an alt name property, so you could do that. So like, let's just say for the title one, let's just say we've got a title for the page, which is actual, it is an actual field in here. Well, let's just say if that was empty, we wanted to fall back on the actual content nodes name. So you could say node name, or I think it's actually just name, to be honest, because that's what the
iPublish content is. Okay.
So that would give those. Oh, actually, that's completely wrong. So that would use those like that.
Okay.
Yeah, there's also options to make it recursive. So you can go up the tree if there's no other values, and also give it a default value as well. So there's other values you can add onto these things when they're being set.
That's cool. Very nice.
On a whole, it tries to do as much as it can without those extra parts.
Yeah, so I quite like this approach. Like you said, there's other mappers or similar products where you have to do a lot of kind of, like, say on app startup, I want to map this Poco class or this model to this type of content and do a lot of plumbing in terms of I've got to write 10 or 20 lines so I can map this class to this.
Sure. Yeah.
I know that you obviously would never, in theory, do it in the view and convert a content directly in the view, but it's nice that you could. But obviously, you would do it in the controller level or your Surface controller hijacks.
Yes, yeah, exactly. So that's where we, for like the Carlsberg project. I mean, that's the only one I've been working on for the last 9 months. But that's where we do this. So we do it in the controller. There is, I mean, just coming back to what Stefan from the core team has been working on is his the name of it, iPublish Content Model Factory, where this will, whenever Umbraco, internally within the Umbraco core, whenever an iPublish content node is selected, it will go through the model factory. So if you have a custom model factory to make your own models, you can plug that in to do it. So like where Stefan has his model builder that will automatically create these models based on your doc types, which is totally cool. I like the idea. You can then sort of turn on his model factory, and it will just use these. So every time you call iPublish content, it will just automatically be that model, which is really cool. The issue I had, and the reason I haven't used Stefan's model builder is because my models do not represent my doc types. So let's just say if I flip back to Carlsberg, is that I have these models, which is all like which represents the JSON objects I was given, like site title, language ID, maximum age, minimum age. These are like values that will be needed for the age gates. But things like maximum age, I don't need to. I know there's going to be no maximum age ever set for an age gate. You're not going to stop someone coming into a site by saying you're too old for this site. So I don't need that in Umbraco. I need to set like the minimum age because it could be like 18 or 21. But also there's other properties within this model that I don't need Umbraco to be editable within Umbraco. I'll either get the data from somewhere else, or it'll be populated elsewhere in code or from a config file. So my models do not represent my doc types. So I use Ditto to kind of populate the models from the doc type content, but not bind it one-to-one with it.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of the main reason why I don't use the model builder approach.
Okay.
Yeah, it gets complicated.
Sounds it.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I guess the other thing I want to sort of this question already came up from people who had a quick look at Ditto, and that was like, I've got my model, and this is kind of okay for like the sort of the native or simple types, but what if we've got a more complex type? What do we do in those scenarios? So what I've added just before we started this call was I've added another property, which is just a media picker property, which obviously would be a complex property. So if I was going to say select my avatar and say save and publish that, I can now add that to my model. So let's just say, should we do this right? So I can either call it the same name, and we know that. I mean, if you've been using Umbraco long enough, you know that when you save a media picker, it's going to be the ID. Yep. So come on here. Stuff from here. Let's just add what's in here. I'm live coding. Pete Duncanson's going to kill me.
Yeah.
So let's just say I have, I want to output the media picker. Because it's already on the property, and I've saved and published, and I've saved and published this item.
Yep. And
I've added it to my whichever one it is. I've added the property to my Poco class. Yep. And I've put it into my view. It should render on the front end. Don't fail me, Pete.
No.
So we've got the ID of the image, which is is great, but we don't want that. We want the actual image. So this is where using Umbraco we can kind of say we want to map it to something that we can use a bit more useful. We could map it to an iPublish content. But then we also would have to implement like a custom what they call value converter, which I think Javon has created a package that has like a whole bunch of like native ones for that that you could plug in and use that. But let's just say we wanted to map it to something called like a custom class. So I created first one I made earlier.
Blue Peter style.
Yes. So we've got that custom class, and that just contains a couple, which is like the ID and the Umbraco file, which we know is like the name of the property that contains the value of the image. So call that my media. I add that in as the type. If I save these, I'm using app code. It takes a while to save. So if I try to render this on the front end now, it would be null because it doesn't know how to map, or Umbraco doesn't know how to map the property to a type, and this is where .NET type converters come in. Have you used .NET type converters?
I personally haven't, Lee. So do divulge. So
Shannon wrote probably the most impressive code I've ever seen, which is there's an extension method within Umbraco, and I don't know if you can actually get it here. It's called try convert to. Is it here? Yeah. So try convert to is quite clever. It goes through all of the kind of the types. So this is what we use internally within Ditto, and it's an Umbraco thing, and it would like try to convert one type to another type using type converters and whatever else. So I mean, type converters have been around in .NET since like maybe not day one, but I think maybe
early days.
But yeah, they've been around for a long time. So what you do is you decorate your class, saying that I'm a type converter for my specific thing. And again, here's one I made earlier.
Yep.
Scott Hanson has a good post. I think it's called something like "There's not enough type converters in the world" or something like that. But it gives an outline of what are type converters and why .NET devs haven't heard of them and why they should use them. Okay. But what it does is it contains a whole bunch of methods that you can override. And the first one says, when you call on a type converter, it says, can I convert from this type to the other? And this is where you ultimately want to say yes or no. You can or you can't do it.
Yep.
So what would happen is that value that we had come through, like the value of 1078, will come through to the type converter. As a type, I'm an integer. Can you convert me? Yes, I can.
Yeah, as long as I'm the type of integer, we know that we can then convert you. Yeah.
Yeah. So then, when it says you can convert me, it will then call the convert from.
Mm-hmm.
Here, I'm just doing a bit of a courtesy check. Yeah, you're an integer. I cast you to an int. You're a media ID. At this point, I don't have access to the Umbraco helper, so I've created a new instance of it. There may be a way of getting hold of that. I don't know. And then I just call type media, and then I get back, wait for it, and I publish content of a media node, and then from there I use Ditto to convert
it back. Yeah.
So Ditto is trying to map a content node which finds a media node and then uses itself to map to that other class.
That's nice.
Yeah, it's a bit of a conception thing going on, but yeah, it's there. So with those in place, what would happen instead of one sec, machine stalled. What would happen now is that this would then map into place. So instead of seeing the ID, we'll just get, because we've not changed my view, so it might just give me the type.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it gives me the class name called my image, because that's all that's doing when it outputs that. But what I have is my Umbraco file. So if I save that view, I put it on the front end, I get the path to my image. So it's all strongly typed. I've lost where I am. It's all strongly typed. So just to finish off. There you go.
Brilliant.
So that's mapping like more of a complex one. The questions that I get asked about a lot, which is archetype. The important thing to kind of know here is that if, let's just say this, I wanted to map this to an archetype, so let's just say media picker was actually an archetype.
So which, for other people that don't know, archetype is a property or an editor in Umbraco that allows multiple nested properties, yes?
Yes, that's correct. You can construct your own sort of property definition. It's like, think of them as like nested block types almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but they give you like a JSON like complex structure, and then you can map those back. So you would have a custom type converter that would say in here, is it an archetype? And then if it was an archetype, you can then convert whatever you need to convert from there.
Okay, so then go loop over the JSON and try and figure out how to map it back.
Actually, you don't need to, because with those one of the things with Umbraco with those property converters, or they're called property value converters, is that when a property editor comes with a property value converter, before it hits the type converter, it will have already done the conversion. So let's just say if you had an archetype, this source type here would not be a string. It would not be. It wouldn't.
Oh, so it's not a string of JSON then?
No, it's archetype's model.
Ah, sweet.
Whatever that uses internally. So if you had your own custom value converters, when it comes into this type converter, that's what type it would already be.
Okay, cool.
It's quite powerful. So you don't have to do any kind of further conversions from JSON to another model or anything. You've already got
As long as that particular editor that you're using ships with property value better. Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean I think I've covered most of my demo.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. I know this is going to be a question that may come up often. Performance. How do you get around the issues of hydrating objects that you don't need to, or properties that you don't need to, and kind of killing performance? So say I've got a list of news articles, and only I really need one property from that, which is like the news title and probably like the URL. But if I was mapping those model to get kind of like a list or an IEnumerable or kind of like a collection that I can loop over in for each, how do I ensure that I don't take like the rest of the properties that I don't need? So like I don't need like the thumbnail, I don't need like the body copy, and some other computed things. Say if there was a nested content picker or media picker which was like related nodes, how do I stop it from doing all that trawling just for like a list of news articles?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, it's if when you call that, if you had like a fully fleshed out model that had all of those extra things that were going to have a lot of computing with it, then yeah, there would be a performance hit. So it's kind of just be wise on how you use it. So either create like a different model that only creates.
Yeah, I was going to say, would you just create like a slimmer version of the model of the class?
That's probably the way I would want to do it. But yeah, I mean, the reflection does have a kind of a hit. But what we've noticed so far with the work we've been doing on these Carlsberg projects, the performance has been really good. It's been quite fast.
Fantastic.
There's extra things that we're looking at with Ditto, whether to do caching or not. So when you reflect an object, cache those kind of properties. But we haven't needed to do that yet. So if performance got bad, that's the next thing I'd look at. But at the moment,
so far it's been good. Fantastic.
Yeah, it's been fast.
But like you said, I suppose with the performance question I just asked, I suppose that can go with any kind of coding question. You can do architect something in such a way that could perform very good, or you could write a similar piece of code that could perform just as bad.
Or something, it'd be pretty bad.
Yeah. So yeah, use it wisely and use it smartly is
I mean, we made this kind of open source. I mean, this was I got into a discussion on the forum. This was coming back to your original question, I think, of why create something yourself when there's other mappers out there. And I've been asked that question several times over the last week. I'm like, oh God, I don't know. I'm not sure. No offense to your package. If it works for you, that's great. But I mean, ultimately, we've built a solution that solved the problem that we had at that specific time, which is like January. And we've just released the code. So if there's anyone who wants to use it, perfect. If you want to contribute, even better. Or if you want to find any bugs or anything, just
that's fantastic.
And
it's nice to it's nice to have a choice of options as well. Like you said, back in the day, we was very limited with choice. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago, we only really had USite Builder was kind of probably the only choice if you wanted to kind of go down that route of kind of mapping models to your content. Obviously now we've got a wealth of choice. Obviously with Ditto, kind of model last completion with Stefan's option. So yeah, it's nice to have a choice, and I like this approach that it's based on convention. So just the one extension method. So that's all there is. Just one extension method. .as.
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple more that go around it. There's like one for collection. So if you had a whole bunch of child. So like let's just say you were in a news archive. So you'd map the main news page, and if you had all the news nodes underneath, then you could map all the collection of them. And it just look through each one, just a link extension, I guess. They're the main ones.
Fantastic. Is there anything else you want to add? I'm just very quickly skimming to make sure there's no questions or anything like that. I don't think there is, actually.
No one's got any questions.
Yeah, I know.
Not even about my headphones.
Exactly.
The strongest neck muscles in the world.
Exactly. You must balance with a bowling ball in your head.
Exactly.
But no, it's been a very informative demo, and it's been easy to understand how and why it was needed, and yeah, it's been an insightful demo, and I'm sure, yeah, once we have a project that we can use it here internally over at the Cogworks, we'll try and give it a go.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think it just, you know, whenever the problem comes up, you know, use whatever you need to use. I mean, I was saying to some people recently that, you know, I do like Stefan's model builder, and I think on the next project that they will probably use the same thing. You know, which is fine. I don't need to. It's not a religion. I'm not tied to Ditto.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I just use whatever I feel solves the problem at that point in time, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And use the tools available that solves the problem that you're dealing with. Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, thanks for chatting with me today, Lee.
Welcome.
And I will see you in November at the UK Festival.
Yes, I'll be there.
Excellent. Thanks for chatting, Lee. Speak to you soon. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Bye.